Speak to me only about that which will definitely lead me to my highest good. Welcome to the meditation on the Bhagavad Gita. This is a meditation indeed. For the next 45 minutes or so, what we are doing is to meditate on the words of the Lord and imbibe it in our lives. The purpose of our study is not scholarly, it is not to become scholars or to write a thesis or something like that, but it is a discipline by which we can become divine ourselves. Swami Vivekananda used to say, be gods yourself. Be gods yourself. That's what we need to be. From the feeling that we are mere mortals and that we are bound down by circumstances, we graduate to that level wherein we can feel that the divine is indeed in me, the divine is working through me. That way, we become gods, so to say. So we completed the study of, and in the second chapter, Sri Krishna taught Arjuna about how one can keep one's mind in a steady frame. See, if you're a photographer, you know what is a steady frame. You have to keep the frame very still and steady. Then only would you get crispy, clear photographs. Of course, nowadays you have got autofocus and all that. But the original cameras were where you needed to have a lot of focus and you needed to keep it very steady. So this steadiness alone can make for a crispy, clear understanding of who we are. So that Sri Krishna called as Brahmi Sthiti. That means the state of being in Brahman. What is Brahman? Brahman is the very essence of our being. While we have put on these three sheets, so-called the three cages of the physical body, the mental body, as well as the spiritual body. But beyond all of that is the real spirit, the real being. So, Brahmi Sthiti is to go back to that state from where we all originate, that is, which is our real abode. Sri Ramakrishna was very fond of listening to a song by which Swami Vivekananda sang when he first met him. Manu cholo nijo nike tone, সংসারো bideshe bideshir beshe, keno brahmo okarone. Manu cholo nijo nike tone. Oh my mind, go back to your real abode. Samsaro Videshe, you have come into this world which is a Videsh, that means which is a foreign country for you. Videshir Beshe, you have come in the garb of a foreigner. And you know that you cannot stay there for too long. If you're a foreigner, you have to go back. You will need to go back and return to your real abode. Brahmo Kano, why are you trying to roam around here in this world and think that this is yours? No, you have just come here as a guest. You have just put on a garb, as it were, and you need to remove that garb. You need to demystify yourself, as they say now. Demystify yourself and then go back to your real abode. That is called as Brahmi Sthiti. And Sthiti means to be in that state, even though you are situated within the body, yet you are perched on such a high level. Brahmi Sthiti is that high level whereby you can see the panorama of everything that is going on, yet you are not involved in it. It is involvement that makes all the difference. When we involve ourselves in things, that is, when we get attached to these things, when we hold on to the world, then what happens is misery, dukkha. That's what Sri Buddha spoke about, the dukkha. It is misery and misery alone, because this is not my state. Therefore, I am miserable. See, sometimes I just try to gather some joy here and there, but that is not permanent. But that Brahmi Sthiti, that state of being one with Brahman, one with the reality, is my real nature. It is my real abode. Esha Brahmi Sthiti Parth. That's what he said in the previous chapter. So, in order to do that, what we need to do is to make our mind our own friend. Instead of making it our enemy, we make it our own friend and tell the mind, look here, this is not your place. This is not your place. You have to go back and back and back and back. Sri Krishna will talk about it in the next few chapters. When Sri Krishna told this to Arjuna, that you need to become established in that state of jnana, in that state of supreme oneness, Arjuna became a bit suspicious. Not suspicious, he started having a doubt. Rather, it was a confusion. He says, you are talking about this I state, and yet you are asking me to fight the war. What is this? You want me to perch on the highest state, and yet you are asking me to deal with the world, to fight and carry on all my activities. So that is where Arjuna expresses his doubt. See, now he has heard about serenity. He has heard about being stable. And therefore, naturally, he has been prejudiced about it. Now he says, I should, in that case, give up whatever I am doing, and I should go about into the forest or somewhere into the caves, and then be absorbed in the thought of my own self, my supreme being. So there is that prejudice. And when that prejudice comes, any type of prejudice comes to us, it's difficult for us to understand the other point of view. See, this is in the world of duality. If we have any prejudices regarding anything for that matter, that prejudice will lead us into misunderstanding. We will not be, even if somebody tries to make you understand, that prejudice will come in front and it will not allow those thoughts to be welcome. Therefore, prejudice by in any manner is not desirable. So, let us start the third chapter with this. Arjuna Uvacha Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam Niyojayasi Keshava. Janardana, O Janardana. Sri Arjuna here uses two epithets to Sri Krishna. Generally in grammar, if you use two epithets or two adjectives in the same sentence, it is not considered to be a good usage of the sentence, to a proper construction. But here he uses these two adjectives to Sri Krishna. Jayasi chet karmanasti. If you think that karma, that means performing of actions, is greater, then if according to the discriminative insight is superior to action, then why do you enjoin on me this terrible action of engagement in war? Why are you engaging me in this war? Yes, this question, very pertinent question, of course, because Sri Krishna has been inspiring him all this time to raise himself and then become perched on the level of Brahman or on the stand of Brahman. So that is called as Sankhya Yoga, which we studied in the last chapter. Sankhya Yoga, the yoga of jnana, of knowledge. If that is great, then why are you asking me to perform this action? So, Vyamisreneva, in the second verse also, he says, Vyamisreneva vakyena buddhim mohayasiva me tadekam vadanischitya yena shreyoham apriyam. By seemingly conflicting words, you are confusing my understanding. Speak to me only about that which will definitely lead me to my highest good. See, he is not an easy student or an easy disciple. He is the one who will extract the best out of the teacher. So even it means a little bit disrespect, yet he will force the teacher to give out the best. So here he says, sometimes you are saying that non-performance of work is great, and sometimes you are saying performance of work is great. Then tell me exactly what you have in mind, what I should do. So this conversation occurs in the Bhagavad Gita again and again and again. You will see this happening again and again. Sri Krishna is saying something to him and Arjuna is not able to understand it, or even if he understands it, he pretends as if he has not understood it, and therefore he asks Sri Krishna to explain it again. This is a good method of learning, challenging the teacher, as it were, respectfully, not with disrespect, challenging him with respect for knowing the highest. Vyamisreneva vakyena. So, Sri Krishna answers this. Lokesmin dvividha nishtha pura prokta maya nagha jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. Asmin loke dvividha nishtha maya pura prokta anagha. Asmin loke, in this world, dvividha nishtha prokta. Dvividha nishtha means two-fold path. He uses a very pertinent word over here, nishtha. I will come to that a little later. In times of yore, a two-fold spiritual path was taught by me, O sinless one, that of knowledge for Sankhyas, who are pure contemplatives, and that of action for yogis, who combine detached work with devotion. See? Sri Krishna says, Pura, in the past, in the beginning of creation. Pura means two meanings. It may be in the past, immemorial past, or it can also be in the immediate past. This term Pura is used in this manner by the commentators of this verse. So he says, Pura That means before we were all born, before the creation even took place, these two paths had been put before humanity. It says, according to the Hindu mythology, Narayana, the Supreme Lord, he asks Hiranyagarbha or Brahma to go into the world and create. He says, you now multiply yourself and you manifest the world, the universe, so to say. So according to the mythology, Brahma creates from within himself the seven putras or seven sons. They are called Marichi, Atri, Angirasa, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu and Vashishta. These were the seven rishis. Through them, the creation began. And after some time, he felt that, well, creation is in progress, no doubt, but there needs to be some knowledge also in creation. So, Brahma creates the four Kumaras. That means the four ever youthful beings, four Kumara. Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana and Sanat Kumar. These are the four Kumaras. So then he tells them, now you go, you multiply yourself and then you spread the knowledge that you have received. But all these four Kumaras say, no, we do not want to procreate, we do not want to multiply ourselves. We are happy with this knowledge. Whoever wants knowledge, let them come and ask us. We will give them knowledge. But we do not want to go through this cycle of birth and death. We do not want to do that. That is to say, by the creation of the seven rishis, the Lord brought forth into the world the path of action, karma. And then by the creation of the four Kumaras, he brought forth into the world the path of knowledge, karma and jnana. So these two paths, Sri Krishna is mentioning about this, that these two paths were brought by me to this world in the past itself, in time immemorial. And he says, Pura Prokta Maya Anagha. This is also a important word. He addresses Arjuna as Anagha. Anagha means sinless being. Anagha. The soul or the Atman is sinless. It is deathless, it is birthless, and it is sinless. What is sin? The concept of sin in Hinduism is that we cover ourselves with some dirt from time to time due to our actions, our karmas. We cover ourselves with that. But there is always redemption out of this. We can always get rid of this. As soon as we make up our mind to clean ourselves, to cleanse ourselves of all this dirt that has accumulated over us, from that moment, our progress has begun. See, many people, they do not realize that they have accumulated all these so-called sins. But sin is not an absolute entity in Vedanta or in Hinduism. This much has to be understood at all times. Sin is not something that you are born with. Sin is not something that you are going to have, and that you will be redeemed only, at some stage, later stage. beyond the world. That is not the idea of sin that we have. So the Vedantic concept of sin is that we unknowingly we accumulate this dirt more and more. A time will come that when we need to do a spring cleaning of ourselves. But if we clean it every day, then that big job of cleansing ourselves for keeping ourselves for a spring cleaning or having a very bigger job will become unnecessary, so to say. So that is why chanting the name of the Lord, thinking of the divine, performing actions in a manner that we do not accumulate any of these so-called dirt, is the path or is the marga by which we can cleanse ourselves of that. That's why Kabir, I think he says that Sacha sabun lena moorak hai santan ke pasa. See, you want to cleanse yourself. If you just go and buy a cheap soap, it won't help. So go to a santa, that means a person who has realized the divine. Go to him or her and then beg of that person to give you that very strong detergent by which you can cleanse yourself all for once. So this cleansing is important in our life. What we are doing today, sitting here and then studying the Bhagavad Gita, is also a cleansing process. Unknowingly or knowingly, you are cleansing yourself or ourselves. We are cleansing ourselves. So here he addresses, Sri Krishna addresses Arjuna as Anagha. You are basically sinless, my dear. Do not consider yourself as a sinner and then worry yourself about it and then say, oh, what will happen to me? What will happen to me? No, nothing is going to happen to you. You will be what you are. Only what you are going to do is you are going to lose some dry skin, so to say. You are going to lose some dirt from your being. That's all. Anagha. So he says here, Pura Prokta Mayanaga, and then he uses another word which I said, Nishtha. Nikarshena Sthanam iti Nishtha. Nishtha means equanimity. Stha means to be stable. Nikarshena, that means definitively being stable, is known as Nishtha. It's a quality whereby I'm quoting from Shankaracharya. Nishtha is that quality whereby the intellect does not waver under any circumstances, any challenging circumstances. That is called as Nishtha. So I have given this kind of Nishtha. That means these two paths. If you follow these paths, surely you will not waver. Surely you will reach your goal. That assurance is given by Sri Krishna over here. Lokesmin vividhanishta pura prokta mayanaga. What are those two paths? Jnana yogena sankhyanam. Jnana yoga, the path of knowledge to the jnanis. That means those who are contemplatives, ascetics and contemplatives, Sankhyanam. And then Karma Yogena Yoginam, the path of action for the Karma Yogis. Now, in the next few chapters, Sri Krishna will refer to Karma Yogins as just Yogin. Just Yogin. So it doesn't mean that he's a Raja Yogi or, the other types of yogis, but by yogi, Sri Krishna will refer to the Karma Yogis. From here onwards, you will see this reference. So he says, I have given you this twofold, very firm path, spiritual path, and you have to accept either of it, either or both of it. Coming to a little bit of philosophy, Shankaracharya says about this, says that by practicing karma yoga, one will become pure, chitta shuddhi, one's mind will become totally pure, and then you will be prepared to practice jnana yoga. And through jnana yoga, you will reach the ultimate. Whereas Sri Ramakrishna, Tilak, of course, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, in his Gita Rahasya, in his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, he says, no, Karma Yoga is an independent path. Just by following Karma Yoga itself, one can reach to the divine. So we have these two paths. You can either take to the left or to the right. Whichever path you choose, that is perfectly all right. You don't have to go through both the paths together. Sri Ramakrishna also, he says that it is possible for one to reach God through Karma Yoga alone. There are two words that we need to be aware of while studying the scriptures here. One is the word karma. The other word is karma yoga. See? Karma means just action. Any action that I do, wanting some result out of it is called as karma. I go to the temple, I have a wish. I go to the church, I have a wish. I go to the mosque, I have a wish. So I express my wish to the Lord, and then I say, look here, Lord, I want to perform this kind of ritual, or this many mantras I will chant, or this kind of yajna, yagas, that means fire worship, etc. I will perform. Grant me this. So what you are doing is you are bargaining, or you are bartering your love for something that you want or need in your life. It's perfectly all right. That's how we are. That is karma, the path of karma. All of us, most of us in the world, we are following the path of karma. But those people who are desirous of achieving to the highest, who have found out that just performance of karma itself, just performance of action in order to get some result is useless. One who is totally convinced about the futility of karma, for them karma yoga is recommended, wherein you are doing your actions, but you are doing with a sense that the Lord is performing the action. He is within me and he is performing the action. Sri Ramakrishna used to sing this song by a very famous Bengali poet, and he used to say, Ami Jantro, Tumi Jantri. I am the machine and you are the operator. Mother, you are making me do whatever I do. I do not do it. You are making me do it. So you do not have any sense that you are performing any action. So, but in order to reach to that state, one will start from the kindergarten of Karma Yoga. That is, first of all, whatever action I am performing, slowly and slowly, I say, this belongs to you, O Lord. I am giving, still you have this differentiation, and say, I am giving this to you. It is up to you to make it useful or to reject it. It's up to you. I am not bothered about it. So that is how the Karma Yoga starts. A stage will come when Karma Yoga becomes an involved karma yoga. That is, you will feel the presence of the divine within yourself doing all of your action. And you will see that I am not doing any action. Ultimately, it is the Lord who is doing all this action. So that stage will come later. That is the efficacy of karma yoga. Whereas wherever we refer to yoga here in this Bhagavad Gita in the next few chapters, it is karma yoga that is meant. Whereas if it is said as karma, it means it is the path of work, desirous of gaining something, desirous of the fruits of such activity. So with that, we will proceed to the next verse. Na karmanam anarambhat naishkarmyam purushosnute na cha sanyasanadeva siddhim samadhigacchati. Na karmanam anarambhat naishkarmyam purushaha ashnute. By non-performance of action, a person does not gain the state of spiritual passivity or the state of egoless, actionless state called naishkarmya. This is a technical word used in Vedanta. Naishkarmya siddhi means the state where you will not feel that you are doing anything at all. You become actionless. Work gets done through you, but you do not feel at all that you have done any work. This is a very high state which comes after the pursuance of bhakti yoga, jnana yoga or karma yoga. So he says you will reach to that state of naishkarmya, but by not performing action, you should not think that you have achieved to that state of spiritual passivity. By mere external abandonment, sannyasa, it does not attain to perfection. See? Sri Ramakrishna used to say this, that when I am performing any action, when I am doing any duty, I am aware that I am doing. Right? We are all aware when we are when performing any action, we are aware that we are doing that action. But if that duty, that work that I am doing, if it becomes very natural to you, if it becomes almost mechanical to you, and he gives the example of our breathing. See? We realize the importance of breathing when we are having a cold. When our nose is blocked, then we realize, oh, look, I am unable to breathe properly. So, but otherwise, we are not aware at all that we are breathing, isn't it? We are not aware of that. So he says there that such actions that you perform without your knowledge, without your involvement at all. So when that same state comes to a karma yogin or to a jnani, then you will know that he has attained to the highest, does not feel one's involvement at all over here. So na karmanam anarambhat naishkarmyam. Naishkarmyam karmarahityam, says Sri Shankaracharya in his commentary. Karmarahityam, that means the karma actions do not become important in your life. Actions do not become important in your life at all. First, it is essential for us to perform all actions sincerely with a feeling that I am doing this action for my welfare as well as the welfare of others. Next, I keep going further, climbing the ladder of spirituality further. Then I start realizing that, whatever I am doing ultimately is going to the divine. These are steps, different steps of yoga. You feel that you are offering it, or you are doing that action to please the divine, to make the divine happy, so that God becomes gracious to me. You further transcend that state, climb up another ladder, and then you will feel that indeed that divine energy is making me do all of these things. Otherwise, where would I get the energy to do anything? The divine is making me do everything. So how can I claim that I am doing anything at all? Then a sense of complete surrender overtakes us. So that is called as the Naishkarmya Siddhi. Naishkarmya Siddhi. First you work, wash your dirt away, and then when you will not have any desires at all, then you will be able to retain that knowledge that the divine is working through me. So Sri Ramakrishna was asked once, "Sir, when will all duties drop away?" Sri Ramakrishna's his language and his explanations were very simple. It was non-complicated. So I will just read out from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. When somebody asks the question, when will all the duties drop away so that I can become completely absorbed in the divine? He says, when, even by chanting God's name once, you have horripilation, that is when the hair stands on an end, when tears flow in torrents, then you will know that the rituals and other actions, they drop away by itself. So it just drops off by itself. Therefore, and he used to give a very wonderful example, is to say, when the daughter-in-law of the house is pregnant, the mother-in-law will allow her to perform all the actions of doing all the household duties. But as the day of delivery approaches, the mother-in-law will relieve her from her duties and will make her will perform all the actions herself, and then will allow the daughter-in-law to look after the baby when it is born or when it is going to be born. And after the baby has been born, the mother-in-law makes sure that the daughter-in-law does not do any other work except looking after the baby. So it's a simple example, but this is how in spiritual life, our spiritual life evolves, so to say. So we evolve. God will relieve us from all those duties and responsibilities. But as long as I am not relieved, as long as I have not reached to that state, I should keep on performing all the actions that come to me, that I am required to perform. So there are these 4 states of action. One is that there is this doership and the desires, all the desires that we have. If the desires are not good, if they are evil, then we fall down. That means our spiritual life takes a downward turn. And then when there is doership, but there is no desires, that means we are duty bound, but I do not have too much of desire. I do not keep too much of the fruits to myself. Then what happens is the accumulation of whatever I have done, it will stick with me. The punya or papa will stick with me. This is the second states. And the third state, in the third state, there is desire, but I do not The third state is that I do all the work, but I do not have any desire at all. I do not want anything back. I only want to enjoy the grace of the divine. The fourth stage is that I am not the karta, I am not the doer, and therefore I do not have any asakti, or I do not have any desire to do anything or to gain anything at all. That is the highest state. So that is what is called as Naishkarmya. So that needed a little bit explanation. So I mentioned that in a greater detail. Naishkarmyam purushosnute nacha sanyasanadeva siddhim samati gacchati. So if it does not drop off by itself, do not try to drop it off forcibly. Sri Ramakrishna's another example is about the fruits. When the fruit ripens very well on the tree, then the fruit drops off by itself. But if you go and pluck it up when it is raw, then the fruit will not have the desired effect or desired taste that we require. So as long as we are endowed with that desire or that motivation to perform action, keep on doing it to the best of your ability. Keep on doing it, but resting the oars on the divine, resting yourself on the divine or the feet of the divine. That is the idea. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishthatya karma krit karyate hyavashah karma sarvah prakriti jair gunaihi. The fifth verse, he says, no person can ever remain even for a moment without performing any action. No one can remain without working. So, saying this, commenting upon this, Shankaracharya says that even this breathing, etc., that is also an action. That is also an action. Breathing, eating, sitting, standing, all of this is an action. So you cannot remain without action. The impulses of nature deprive him of freedom in this respect and compel him to act. We keep on doing these things. We are required to do these actions. The impulses of nature deprive him of freedom in this respect. That means we do not have too much of freedom. We had to perform according to Prakriti, according to the law of nature. We need to keep on performing these actions. In the sixth verse, Karmendriyani samyamya ya aste manasasmaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mithyacharas sabuchyate. He who restrains the organs of action but continues to brood in his mind over the objects of sensual desire enjoyed through them, such a deluded person is called a hypocrite, mithyachari, one who abstains from work but enjoys that mentally. For such a person, he says, as mithyachari, a hypocrite. So you cannot think about. Sri Ramakrishna used to give a beautiful example. He says, near Dakshineshwar, there was a garden with lots of fruits. Now, some monkeys, a big band of monkeys came and attacked the garden, the orchard. And they went about eating everything. And then some of them, they ate some of the fruits, and then they sat, and then they closed their eyes as if they were meditating. So Sri Ramakrishna says, some children saw that and say, look here, the monkeys are meditating. So the elderly gentleman over there said, yes, you know what they are meditating upon? They are meditating upon which orchard they can attack later. They can attack later. That is the meditation that they have. So that indeed happens. I hope most of us, we do that kind of meditation when we sit for meditation. What do I have to cook? What ingredients should I use? All this. Our mothers are experts in such meditation. Men also are experts in such meditation, of course. So he says, karmi indriyani samyama, one who restrains the organs of action but continues to brood in his mind over the objects of sensual desire. Such a deluded person is called a hypocrite. That is to say, perform your action as long as you have desire to perform your actions, you are required to do your duties, perform all of them. But just add a small element over there, that all this action that I am performing is for the sake of the divine. That's all. That changes the whole structure of your action. All our actions will then assume a different, all the fruits of our actions assume a different shape, as it were. That shape itself will change, and that will become a great help for us to achieve to that state of Brahmi Sthiti, the state of becoming one with Brahman. So Sri Krishna is talking on this subject again. Yastvindriyani manasa niyamya rabhate Arjuna karmendriyai karma yogam asaktas savishishyate. But he who, controlling all sense organs by the power of his will and becoming non-attached, lives a life of communion through dedicated action, such a person excels. Sri Krishna uses this word here, tu, that means but. That means these people have risen compared to the ones that has been mentioned before. This type of person has risen above the mithyachara or the hypocrisy. So 3 qualities of such a person is mentioned over here. One is they will have total control over their senses. That is, they will engage their senses only where they are required. At other times, they will be withdrawing it. Second is, such persons do actions with great care, yet remains unperturbed by the results. They will put forth all of their energy into it, all of their mind into it, and yet when the results do not come out as they should, they are not bothered about it. See, I think we have an example of Newton. Wasn't it Newton? Newton, when he had in his lab, he was absorbed in his lab for so long. And then one day there was a big fire in the lab. Is it Newton or some other? I cannot. It must be Newton, if I'm not wrong. So in the lab, there was a great fire in the lab. And then he was informed that there is a great fire. So he called his wife and said, come, darling, come and see this fire. You will not see such beauty of fire anywhere after this. See, all of his experiments are there in his lab and they are going to ashes, so to say. But he is asking her to come and see the majesty of the fire over there. So that is real detachment. So that person is doing all of the actions with great care, yet remains unperturbed by the results. And then the third is that such persons are never lazy, does not neglect anything. They are always alert. Saints, all great saints were those who used to be like this. They worked day and night for the welfare of the world, yet they performed it in such a manner that they were fully engaged in it, yet they were beyond it. That is the beauty of Karma Yoga. This is the beauty of Karma Yoga. So Sri Krishna urges us in the next verse to perform all the actions. Niyatam karma. Niyatam kuru karmatvam. Karmajyayo hyakarmanaha. Sharira yatra pichate na prasidhyet akarmanaha. Yes, niyatam, perform your prescribed duties. For action is superior to inaction. If you are totally inactive, even the survival of the body would become impossible. We have been given this great machine or this great tool through which we can attain to the highest. So let us make good use of whatever we have been given. This whole body-mind complex. Put it to good use. Make it work very well. And because by doing such actions, you are not only benefiting yourself, but you are also benefiting the whole universe, which is nothing but the form of the divine. You are offering in the later chapters, Sri Krishna will be talking about the concept of yajna. Any action that you do, any breathing that you do, any talking that you do, any thinking that you do it as if you are offering it into the great sacrifice, the sacrificial fire of the divine, and it is being absorbed and it becomes a blessing to the whole universe. Niyatam kuru karmatvam, perform your prescribed duties, not duties which are nishiddha, that means not duties which are prohibited. Niyatam, prescribed duties, for action is superior than inaction. So, niyata karma, yasmin karmani adhikrataha palayacha ashrutam tat niyatam. Shankaracharya interprets it, yasmin karmani, that action which follows the injunctions of the Shruti, that is the scriptures, or the dictates of the country you live in, the dictates of the society where we live in. Perform all such actions, which does not give out, it may not give you out any special merit for that matter, but you keep performing such action. You need to do such certain actions which won't yield any results, but you need to keep on performing. In Vedanta, we have a term called akarane pratyavaya. By doing something, you are not gaining anything, but if you do not do such actions, then you will incur sin, or you will incur the wrath of not doing that, the sin of not doing it. So you need to do such certain actions. So these 4 types of actions are mentioned just for our understanding. One is called as the Nitya Karmas. Nitya Karma is the daily performance of daily activities. We need to perform certain daily activities to keep our body clean and strong, that we need to perform. Then there is what is called as Naimittika Karma. Naimittika Karma means occasional, like fasting. Fasting once a fortnight, for example, it gives a lot of energy to the body. Abstaining ourselves from talking, for example, not working in some cases, that's all right, but it will help. We will all come to that. Fasting, then mauna, then vrata, that is then performing certain rituals, etc. All of this is called as Naimittika Karma, occasional actions. Then the third is known as the Kamya Karma. That means desiring. All our jobs or the duties that you need to perform at home or at your office and so on and so forth. That is kamya karma. And then the fourth type of action are nishiddha karma. Those actions which you should not perform. The actions that are prohibited by law, prohibited by society, and even sometimes prohibited by one's own family or one's cultural or societal rules. So we need to avoid such actions. Therefore, niyatam kuru karmatvam. Prescribed duties are nitya, naimittika, and kamya karma. Nitya karma, daily actions that we need to perform, even prayer, etc., is also included in nitya karma. Morning and evening prayers is also included in nitya karma for Hindus. And for other religious people also, they have other nitya karmas. Okay.